Hey folks, welcome back, and if you're new here, welcome. My name is Danae and this is the Acadian Garden and Apothecary. I have had a project I've been wanting to do for months, pretty much since I think September, and I'm finally just getting around to it now. We're going to be making some pre-blended spices and herbs for using in the kitchen, because of course we don't just use herbs medicinally, but they're also great for culinary uses as well. So I've had these herbs here from my garden stored. We have some thyme, some Greek oregano, and this is dried onions. Finally, some dried sage as well, and I also have some salt. I didn't harvest this myself, and it's not actually Morton salt, though I do love the little container here. But it has Celtic sea salt in it. I really like Celtic sea salt. It has a more full-bodied flavor, and you get the benefits of all of the minerals that are found in natural sea salt. So we're going to combine these ingredients. I'm hoping they're dry enough that I can just use my mortar and pestle to crush it. And then I also have this cute little, I'm not sure if it's teak or what kind of wood it's made out of, but my husband got this for me a while ago. There's a Bed Bath & Beyond in the town next door that just a couple of years ago, oh my gosh, this had actually been that long. There's a Bed Bath & Beyond anyway that was going out of business, and my husband managed to snag this for me when it was on sale. But I haven't had a chance to use it yet, and I figured this would be a great way to store spices. It's got a nice little spoon on top too. So while we're throwing this together, this video is not really about making these spices. I just kind of wanted to multitask. But what I really wanted to talk about is everything that went wrong in 2024, and there was a lot of things that went wrong, unfortunately. So I just wanted to share some of the struggles I had last year in the garden and kind of our strategy moving forward for this year. Normally I would be doing a 2025 garden plan, but to be quite honest, I don't have a super strong plan this year. I'm actually choosing to just kind of watch and see what happens and work around it. Of course, I do have some seeds that I'll be starting in February, like my leeks and broccoli and, you know, peppers and things like that. But for the most part, I am taking a bit more of a casual approach this year instead of trying to be as in control of where everything goes. And I'm hoping to kind of feel my way through the garden year. I'm not sure if this is a great strategy or not. This is my first time trying it, but I will definitely let you know how it goes as we move towards the spring and summer. I'm not measuring anything here. I'm really just trying to start making some pre-mixes with these herbs. Some of these I might not need to crush actually. So we're just gonna... So everything except the sea salt, as I mentioned before, is from my garden. I love growing especially perennial herbs, medicinal or culinary, though usually there is some overlap there. Don't discount things like sage and thyme. They're incredibly useful medicinally as well. And I have found having these herbs in my garden, they really do something aesthetically for me. There's a time in the year where you've harvested everything, and unless you decide to do a cover crop, everything kind of just looks bare, and I hate a bare garden. I love to have something that's always growing and blooming in my garden. And so what I did last year is I started alternating rows where I would have things that are annuals, and I would harvest those, and then between those rows I had rows of perennial herbs. So my garden always looked full and vibrant, no matter what time of year it was. There we go. These are whole sage leaves, so I am going to put them in the mortar, crush them up. Thinking I need to buy a bigger mortar. This is cute, but it's not great for making large batches. But yeah, let's talk about what went wrong in 2024. So one of the biggest things that went wrong for me is my approach to pest management, and that doesn't just include bugs. I'm talking deer, raccoons, skunks. We had pretty much everything in our garden last year. The deer were particularly frustrating. They went after a lot of my kales, any of the brassicas, Swiss chard. So we had a baby deer, a fawn, that was born in our backyard 2 years ago, I guess at this point. And that fawn returned the next year with its mother as a young adult deer. And they must have really loved our little site there because they started bringing their friends, and they are incredibly friendly. And I was kind of excited about that at first until I realized how much of my garden they were eating. So the funny thing about young deer is if you're planting a garden and you read that a plant is deer resistant, that deer don't like to eat it, that's only true for adult deer. Young baby deer, they will try and nibble on almost anything. And nibble they did. I tried to use calendula as a pest deterrent. I've heard and seen examples where certain aromatic species like calendula and marigold can be used as a pest deterrent, not just for bugs, but for other animals as well. That did not work out for me. Same with the other strongly scented herbs like sage. They just ate around it. It's not really a problem for the deer. In fact, it was kind of funny seeing the gaps in my garden where I had planted Swiss chard between rows of calendula, and they just munched it down right to the base of the stem. So yeah, the deer were eating all of my plants, which was incredibly frustrating. And they also eventually, even in winter, went after my leeks. So I had planted a lot of leeks that we ate, I would say 90% of them by the time it was October. And I had left the rest over winter with the plan of letting them grow next season, flower, and I could collect those seeds. And I went out in December when the snow was receded a little bit, and I found that the deer had even eaten my leeks as well. So nothing is truly safe from a deer in winter. When they're on that starvation diet, they'll go after pretty much anything. So just something to keep in mind if you are trying to do seed saving like I was. So like I said, I tried a few things to deter the deer. I tried planting strongly scented herbs. I also bought they're like these sonic repellents. You stick them in the ground, they have little stakes on them, and they make a high-pitched sound that's supposed to upset animals. I believe the one we had as well, it flashed. And that worked for all of a month until they got used to it, and then the deer were right back in the yard. And these were really, really bold deer. I remember my husband and I would go out in the evening when we'd see them come into our yard, and I'd have pots and pans and be banging on them. And my husband even took a pellet gun and like shot one in the hindquarters. And yeah, they ran off, but they just kept coming back. I mean, it was like nothing for them. I remember one day I was out in the garden working with headphones on, just minding my own business. I think I was weeding one of my herb gardens, and I had my back turned. And when I looked over my shoulder, not even joking, there was a deer like 6 feet away from where I was. This is what I'm dealing with, y'all. I was here first. Look at you and your little baby out of here. And it had the nerve to act surprised, like I hadn't been there the whole time. So yeah, I think one of the things we're going to do this year is start putting up fencing. It's quite a large area, so I suspect it's going to cost a few $1,000s. So I'm not sure if we might just do it in phases. I'm not sure if I really want to invest that much money into it, but I will say it's frustrating enough that it's something I'm seriously considering. So if you have any advice about how to keep deer out of your yard without fencing, I would love to hear it. One thing that did work pretty well, what is it? Irish soap. We have a ton of Irish soap. I don't remember exactly how we got it, but we've got like bulk bars of Irish soap. And when I learned that folks would hang satchels of it around their garden to deter deer, I decided to take a cheese grater and just start shaving the soap onto certain plants. And it actually worked really well. So the younger deer were starting to eat the tops of my carrots. And using the Irish soap, I was able to save quite a few of my carrots. This is great because I'm making a roast chicken and some butternut squash tonight, which brings me to the other thing that went wrong in 2024, which was everything to do with squash and pumpkins and cucumbers, or not cucumbers, summer squash and zucchini. We had the worst time with squash beetles, the little yellow and black striped beetle, and then of course the squash bug being the gray-bodied insect. We had both in our garden last year and it was a huge issue. I could not get any of my seedlings to really get going. We got lucky. I would say 10% of the squash I planted made it long enough to actually produce gourds. In fact, I want to say we ended up buying a bunch of squash that was already started pretty late in the season, and they took a while to get going. Even those were affected by the squash beetles. That was frustrating. I'm still trying to figure out what to do about that. I think probably what we'll do this year is create some high tunnels to keep the squash protected until it's developed enough that it's more resistant. Beyond that, I'm not really sure what to do. I think I understand more about what probably caused it. So I've been doing the Three Sisters garden this is going to be my 4th year, I believe. So that's a combination of corn, some type of trellising nitrogen fixer like peas or beans, and some type of squash or pumpkin. So I've been doing a combination of corn, butternut squash, and I think last year I actually skipped on the peas, but at any rate, one of the things I had done in that particular area, it's not a raised bed, it's just a plot straight in the ground. I had mulched it heavily with leaves from the previous year. While my intention was to protect the soil, I think what I ended up doing really was creating the perfect habitat for the squash beetles or the squash bugs and the cucumber beetles to overwinter. And so what started off as a minor problem kind of just exploded the next year. They were there before I even started planting the squash. So we'll see how it goes this year, but my plan is to try to keep the plants covered until they're mature enough that they can handle anything that's thrown at them. I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, but I know for me, the very first year I gardened was like the honeymoon period. I had no insect problems at all, and I thought, wow, gardening is easy. Is it always going to be like this? The answer is no. Every year has its own challenges, and you get to learn something as well. So I'll chalk it up to a learning experience, and hopefully we can have more success this year. All right, I think that is enough sage for now, because I do want to still have some pure herbs to use when I'm not wanting a mix. Next is our Greek oregano, and this is pretty dry, so I think I'm just going to throw it in here. I have no idea what this is going to taste like. I'm hoping it's good. So other than deer and squash beetles, we also struggled with raccoons and skunks. My Three Sisters garden was just completely eviscerated last year. I didn't get to harvest any of the corn. Every time the corn was just about ready to harvest, I would come out the next morning and find that the corn cobs had been ripped off the stems and half eaten, ripped open like banana peels. I'm pretty sure that was the raccoon we ended up catching later in the season. It's time for St. Albans Mountain,
where we send all your kind.
Except for the skunk.
That's not his kind.
Oh yeah. Yes, play with your little lid. But we also had the same issue with a skunk that was coming around, except they were rooting at the base of the corn And because those roots are really shallow, it was knocking over the plants, and then it would just help itself to the corn as well. So the raccoon we trapped with a half a heart, and we sent it to St. Albans Mountain, which is where we send all of our captured critters. And I think similar to the deer, the best solution we probably have is going to be putting up fencing, even though I don't want to spend the money. Our final ingredient for this mix is our onion. This was also the source of my greatest disappointment from last year, even more so than losing my squash and corn. We had a case of white rot in our garden. This was the first year I had grown onions outside of the raised beds and directly into the ground, and I didn't even know about white rot. I'd never heard of it before. But we had a bunch of onions that were super close to maturity, only to rot at the last possible moment. Luckily, I discovered it in time and did a little bit of research and understood that it basically meant I wasn't going to be able to preserve my onions the traditional way. So instead, what I did is I picked everything that wasn't too far gone, took it out of the garden, and ended up dehydrating most of it. This is what became of 90% of those onions. These have just been sitting in my pantry waiting to be used. I wanted to turn these into onion powder. So that's what we're going to do today, and add that to our ingredients here. So white rot is one of those things that's really hard to get rid of if it's already in your soil. So I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do to grow onions. Trying to import a bunch of soil and fill a raised bed, that's a lot of money and not nearly what I would need to grow the year's worth of onions that I would like to grow. So I don't really have a solution for this quite yet. Maybe it just means letting my onions go as long as they possibly can and then harvesting them before the white rot starts to set in. We have still enjoyed the onions. We've had them dehydrated, and I guess I should mention we did also freeze a bunch of onions as well. So I guess it wasn't just dehydrating. So we can still enjoy our onions. It's just not the freshly chopped onions like I was hoping for to braid and hang in my pantry. Let's see. Smells really good. So I added the onion powder, and now the last thing to do is add the salt. Now that I'm covered in onion powder, I think we're gonna wrap it up for today. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this little chat. I would love to hear about how your garden went last year, if you had similar struggles as mine, and if you found solutions to those problems. That would be super helpful for me. You guys have provided some really great advice in the past, so definitely feel free to leave a comment. I do read them, and I do take those pieces of advice to heart. All right, until next time, I will see you very soon.